Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Mike Mearls Happy Fun Hour. I am your host, Mike Mearls. I am the franchise creative director on Dungeons and Dragons. So hello chat, how's everything going today? Everyone enjoying a fine Tuesday? It's 1 o'clock here in the Pacific Northwest. I just got back from lunch, had a lunch meeting, and I'm ready to talk skeletons. Skeletons kind of opposite I'm feeling. I ate too much at lunch. Oh, we had Greek food, I hadn't had it in a while, so... I feel like anti-skeletal today, more zombie-like. Maybe we'll tackle a zombie before the end of the hour. So Justin Gann, it was a good lunch. It was Greek food. I love Greek food. So I had 2 gyros. I should have just had one, but I couldn't help myself. I went back up and got a second one. We had a lunch meeting, so we had a spread of food set up. So what we got here, last week we talked about the Blazing Skeleton, and what I wanted to do was show you some tweaks I made to it. Last week, I intended to have the spreadsheet that we use to get a starting point for our challenge calculations. And one thing I want to throw out there is I'm going to show you the spreadsheet, but keep in mind, we use the spreadsheet to just get an initial sense of a creature's relative power. It is not like we don't just punch the numbers in and say we're done. It serves as a starting point for us. So, taking a look at the Blazing Skeleton over here on the left side of your screen, CW3 Claire, very charismatic, and that was by design, and you'll see it because we're gonna get through the full design of a couple other creatures today, hopefully a couple. One idea about the Blazing Skeleton is this is because it's intelligence 8, which might not seem like a lot, but if we go to Handy Dandy D&D Beyond, see I was looking up skeletons before. Compared to other skeletons, this guy's a sharp cookie. Our typical skeleton's intelligence is 6. So this guy is 33% smarter. And smart enough to the point where we'd expect, where here we've got understands all languages but can't speak. Our guy here can speak Common and Abyssal. So the story behind the skeleton is it's a special burning, flaming skeleton. You might be able to see it right here next to my head. This is a skeleton that can be animated from the body of someone killed by flame. And Orcus, or sort of insert your favorite sort of creepy necromantic Lord of the Undead, teaches necromancers or evil clerics how to create this specific type of undead. And some of the tweaks you'll see compared to last week kind of play into that. But this idea is it's a little more intelligent. It's basically a pyromaniac. It just loves to burn things, loves to spread devastation. And the idea behind its high charisma is it really is the force of that magic, the fire magic, that's keeping it together. And what I imagine is, you running with the Orcus theme, it's an animated undead creature, but its sort of essence is demonic in some way. It might be a demon that died and now was in service to Orcus or something like that. We don't have space for the full story thing. But the idea is this guy had a lot more personality. Also, because it's channeling fire magic, I wanted charisma to be its casting stat. It's not a studied caster. Wisdom, it's not very insightful. It's just pure force of personality, allowing it to control fire. So, wanted to take a quick look here and walk you through a few things that shifted since last time based on our spreadsheet, which I'm going to pop up now. Oops, I'm not going to pop up now because I hit the wrong button. Okay, why are you doing that? Oh, it's right up. It's popping up. I thought it was going to pop up over here. Oh, that's hilarious. I'm sure all of you watching, it's right there in front of your eyes. So this is a spreadsheet we use. It accounts for a variety of different effects, like resistance, things like that. Again, this is just something we do for a quick first pass to capture a creature's armor class, hit points. We have some baseline things we account for its abilities, and then we capture basically the first few rounds of its combat ability. We kind of assume that to determine a creature's power, we really mainly care about the first 3 rounds of a fight. Once a fight goes beyond 3 rounds, there's so much variability, it's really hard to start in a system accounting for everything that could possibly happen to give you something that has a really fine point to it. So, what I wanted to do was kind of show you here how I would have approached this creature, and as I walk through, I'll show you some things I ran into. So to start with, we've got our AC 14. We do give a little bit of a AC bonus for flying. And when I say that, what it means is, obviously the creature's armor class isn't changing. What we're getting at is this idea that a flying creature, especially at low levels, is more defensible. It can escape melee attacks. It can fly around, shoot, then maybe get someplace where the players can't get to it. Things like that. So we account for that in the sort of abstract by assigning the creature an artificially heightened armor class when we think of its challenge rating. And again, this is why the spreadsheet is a starting point. It's not the end point, because this is just giving us an estimate. It tells you that you're in the right area or not, or it tells you what area you're in, and then from there, play testing and feedback and actually comparing to other creatures, that's where that comes in. So we've got our 14 here. Saving throw bonuses here. I threw this down as none. It just has 2 saves it's proficient in, so that's really not distorting it enough, and one's charisma. It's not enough really to trigger this one here. Doesn't have the spell shield. This is one that we actually have to call out because it does, when you think about that 3-round constraint, when you're trying to capture that sort of the first few rounds of a fight, shield can be very useful if in one of those 3 rounds or even more, it's getting a significant boost to AC. Then we come to our hit points, pretty straightforward. So this guy, 5 hit dice, D8 hit dice size, con modifier of 1 because of Constitution 13. I often myself, this is a area where I'll tinker with a lot. Hit points to me, unless it's a creature, and you'll see this when we maybe do the zombies, unless the creature's signatures, it's really hard to kill for its challenge. I just kind of set my armor class, set my abilities, and then see where, if I just tinker with hit dice as a first pass, where do we end up? Grumblefist, is there a reason mage armor is not also taken into consideration? We would normally just include that in the armor class. So if you had a creature with mage armor, even if its armor class was 10 to start with, we would just assume it's going to have it cast before a fight begins. So we would just, its AC would just include that. And typically, there is a lot of art to, especially with monsters using spells or NPCs, getting a sense of if it's ready for a fight, what do its stats look like? Assuming that the players surprise it or ambush it, that they are going to get an advantage, especially against a caster. So then we just get our hit dice size, con modifier, and so for me, 27 hit points, as you can see, reflected over here. That's something where I like to tinker with. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can, in case you can't see it. This is, for me at least, in my design, I like to tinker with hit dice. Unless I'm getting hit point things that look ridiculous or compare very poorly to other things of that challenge, then I'll back away. There are a few things here that kind of tinker essentially like armor class, kind of getting a virtual adjustment. Resistance essentially is a hit point boost. Immunities, regeneration, you're getting hit points back. So things like that. Capture attack bonus here, that's pretty straightforward. In this case, there is a little weirdness in the game where your proficiency bonus is determined by your challenge, but your accuracy determines your challenge. So it's kind of a circular, effect here. So typically I'll come in with a target challenge in mind, and therefore a target proficiency bonus. Our Blazing Skeleton's laying at +6 because with its dex of +4 and its proficiency of +2 at the challenge I'm shooting for of 1. And then we come down here, just there's some stuff off to the right, but don't worry about it, it's just detail. And this is here what we just do is just capture, assuming everything hits, and assuming that everyone fails their saving throws, how much damage does this creature do each round for the first 3 rounds of a fight? This creature's pretty simple because it doesn't have any limited abilities. It just has its explosive ember attack. What we do when we do anything that's an area of effect, we assume we are going to take that area of effect damage on 2 targets. Now, the Blazing Skeleton's a little bit different though, because let's say if this was just an AoE attack, we'd say, what's your damage? Now double it, that's your effective damage. Since this is, you hit a target and to do damage to it, and then other creatures within 5 feet also take some damage, we assume that the 2 targets are the initial creature you hit, and then one other creature in that 5-foot radius. So that's why you see this damage is 14. 9 for the initial hit from the explosive ember, and then 5 from the 1d10 fire damage to 1 additional creature. This doesn't really account for the fact that this is creatures, so in theory, if the Blazing Skeleton had allies next to the target, they would take damage. We don't try to do anything like finesse that, because that's really just dungeon mastering tactics and how you're portraying the monsters. Off-turn damage is 3 because this guy has a fiery aura. We assume, again, what I assumed here was you'd probably have 1 character hanging on that aura. as the typical case. One person, the fighter or someone getting up close and beating it down. And that gives us the expected damage of 17 per round. Now, since this guy also now explodes, and I'll talk about this in a second, for 7 damage, I also assumed, because it's 10 feet, I did count this one as only maybe tagging one character. You could argue that that's incorrect, but that's an area where playtesting will help us sort that out. If you have legendary actions, you account for them here, and it's a very similar thing. You just, how many actions can it take? What damage, if any, can it inflict? And if it has lair actions, you account for those here too. Typically, we try not to put a lot of damage in lair actions, because otherwise, if the creature's not in its lair, it starts changing its challenge potentially, and that can just be a little bit messy. So here's our total damage output. Here's our average. There's a bunch of features. You can toggle these on and off. Again, we just do a rough approximation of how this virtually changes your armor class or your damage or attack bonus. And that gives you a rough. Now, let's say here I hit CR1, again, with a spreadsheet. So this is, I can go ahead and play test with this. But let's say if we're like, you know what, Mike, we think this actually really, it's going to hit 2 guys. Let's change that to 17, because we think a second character is going to get caught in that explosive end ability. That would actually put us up to CR2. Even if I have decided, you know what, I'm only going to think one character, I often will just tinker with things like that to get a sense of, well, will this actually change the challenge? In this case, it does. So that tells me when I go to playtesting, I really do have to keep an eye on this creature, because if I'm off in any of my assumptions, it is going to shift it to the point where it maybe should be challenged too. Now, I am going to keep this at 10, because I do think most players, because once they see that someone's taking damage being close to this guy, that they need to get away, I think most parties will very quickly know, I need to move away before, it's dangerous to be close to it. What it also might say, though, is rather than 10 feet, maybe this should be 5 feet. And I could easily see someone arguing, no, this is, the party gets the sense that within 5 feet is dangerous, and then you're making it 10. That could potentially catch people by surprise. So that's something I'd keep an eye out for. My feeling is now, what the real important thing here as a designer, working in the game, is when you're filling in your information here, have a real sense of what's important. Because this is kind of what happened next with this creature. When I first did the spreadsheet, what I found was, and I think, I posted this on Twitter, if you happen to have happen to have seen the version I posted on Twitter, I can't remember the exact numbers, but what I recall was this explosive ember was not doing anywhere near as much damage as it is right now, 2d8 and 1d10. And I was really unhappy about that, because I really felt that what I wanted this creature to feel like was it was throwing a miniature fireball at you every round. That's the flavor I was looking for. And so to see that ability not standing out, because I had other abilities creeping in, kind of taking up that damage budget, so to speak, at the challenge I was aiming for, that made me say, you know what, originally I had these as weapon attacks. And as weapon attacks, they were adding in the dexterity modifier. That modifier of +4, especially on the melee attack, was such a big element of the damage. And especially at challenge 1, that it was distorting everything. It was making me, I had to use a smaller die here, and then obviously I couldn't do it on the splash damage, because 5 is what's working. If I'm at +4, it's just nothing. And as I mentioned last week, if you saw, I really like the sense of this creature's chaotic. Skeletons off the shelf are neutral evil. I wanted this guy, since it has more personality, to be chaotic, and therefore I like the idea of having these high variance attacks, like 2d8 damage. Could be 2, could be 16, it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, but if I crit you, then it's 48, which is very unhappy. And also the aura fire damage. Feeling very variable. It could be 1, it could be 10, it's an equal chance of either. I really want to emphasize that. So when I went back, I made this a spell so I could pull that flat modifier out of there, put more damage into the dice, bring my other attacks down a bit, my aura, I actually think the aura didn't change, but to really make sure that this explosive ember ability was the signature effect that the blazing skeleton was bringing to the table. I would have gotten rid of the fire aura if I had to, but I was able to make it with a 5-foot radius for 3 damage. Now, let me talk a little bit about explosive end. Todd Kenrick, who might be watching, I haven't seen him in chat yet. He works with us, does a lot of videos. If you watch the D&D Beyond videos, he had a suggestion, like, what if when this creature died, it exploded, but if it killed anything, it brought humanoid creatures back as blazing skeletons. And I really like that, because it really captured the flavor of thinking of Orcus, or insert your favorite undead, Lord of the Undead here, that maybe the undead that they help create are more viral in nature. They replace living creatures, literally. Like the classic zombie movie trope: you get bitten, you turn into a zombie. So I like bringing that in, and I like tying it into this really like explosive end attack, rather than just all their attacks in general. It seemed like a nice cadence storytelling wise. So and I know a lot of people online were asking, well, dude, make it explode, right? I mean, make it explode. Everyone likes it when it explodes. So essentially that gives you kind of a sense of where the sort of math comes in. It is really important, though, and to think about when you're working with the math, you really need to have a sense of what do you want to make prominent about this creature, because the spreadsheet doesn't care. The spreadsheet's just going to take any number you put in. You could say on round 3 it's going to do 0 damage on round 1, 0 damage on round 2, and on round 3 it's going to do 58 damage. Well, that's an average of 19, challenge 1, right? What you're doing there is you're telling a story, right? It's a creature that's harmless. It's harmless. Then oh my god, it's going to murder low-level characters. And keeping in mind what that narrative is going to look like, and then you making sure that the math matches the narrative, rather than trying to distort your narrative to match the math. So that was kind of what I saw here as I was working the Blazing Skeleton and refining it. Archmage Derek, shouldn't the skeleton shed bright light naturally? Yeah, it should probably have a feature in here. I think like you can pick that up from the Magman or something like that. That's the yeah, I thought originally it wouldn't, but there's some of our creatures, they do have, if they are burning, they ignited illumination. No, that's the setting itself. This guy doesn't. There are other creatures though that I believe if they are shedding light, it doesn't note it. So that's something which we would have to pick up. And that's a good cleanup pass, like to go through and when you're working on a creature, if you want to get it, especially if you're going to publish, say, the DM's Guild, you want to be very thorough. For your own purposes, a DMing a house game, it doesn't matter. But if you're getting something ready for publication, if you're going to put out there in the DM's Guild or wherever, it's really good to just search D&D Beyond. For instance, what I might do with this creature is show me my advanced filters, and I'm going to look through here and go, show me everything that's immune to fire, because that's probably a good starting point to pick up if there's any traits and things like that I should be looking at. And I see a lot of dragons. It's not as useful, but the Azer. Is there anything here I should look at? Oh, hey, there's illumination, right? And that's the kind of trait that'll pop up, and you go, oh, okay, maybe I should use that. Typically, when you do that, what I would suggest is do a search for like a shared feature, and then compare it by challenge. You don't necessarily have to worry about like, oh, what's the dragon necessarily gonna? I mean, maybe, but I mean, if you're like me, you only have so much time during the day. So what I would do is focus on a creature of a similar challenge, that spread. And then just see, is there anything I'm missing? Is this illumination effect? Should I have that? I can also see things like heated body. Okay, I'm seeing wording here for my fiery aura that I'd probably go back and rewrite it to match this. And that is to me, it's benevolent laziness, right? Like, why reinvent the wheel when I could just take this ability, give it different flavor, but just pick up this text, right? Now, in this case, this one's dealing damage only on a hit if you touch or hit it. So I would not use it because it'd be not the one I'm going for. But I might find a creature with a similar effect, and I can just pick up that language. So yeah, that's where we are with Blazing Skeleton. That's the refinement pass I did with the spreadsheet. And then obviously to make this publishable, then I would do a little more research and make sure that I'm hitting all the notes I need for this creature to function. So what I want to show you really quick, because what I did, actually I'm going to just be straightforward about it. I needed a creature for my game. I wanted to design it. And so I'm going to show you a creature I designed. That's a legendary creature. And then we're going to design a creature from scratch. I want to do a legendary zombie. Oh, no, sorry, a demon. Yeah, you'll see, though. It's going to be tied into our thing. Or maybe we'll do a zombie. We'll see. I'll let chat decide. So this was the Skeleton Guardian. I'm rewriting Keep on the Shadowfell 4th edition adventure, rebuilding it for my Interior Vale campaign. I want to make it like this really important location dedicated to Orcus. So this is kind of the genesis of all this. Let's make a bunch of undead. It's for my home campaign. And chat, sound off if you want. I see a vote for demon. I see a vote for legendary zombie. I'm seeing kind of where we're tied. It probably won't be. I'll try to keep a sense of where where we're going with that. I kind of, yeah, the legendary zombie would be weird, and it'd be kind of fun to see what that might look like. So I'm going to walk you through. I actually have here the spreadsheet here for this legendary skeleton. So let's do this. Let's put this guy here. So what I wanted was, yeah, that's the guy. If we take a peek back here, let me see if I've got, oh yeah, skeletons. So I'll do this, and then we will actually, no, it'd be easier if I do this. Just throw this over here. Oops, that's what I wanted. Do this. So hopefully my head doesn't get in the way. We will enhance. And I'll take a look. This was one of my favorite creatures from 4th edition. I love the four-armed skeleton. Oops. Ah! I am just all... Okay, so apparently I touched something I shouldn't have. Here we go. It's a different mouse this week. That's my excuse. Different mouse. So no, it looks like I pressed the mouse button and was then scrolling with the mouse. So I always like this creature. Four-armed skeleton, like, hey, twice the fun. Turn the weapon department. And it was the stat block. Where is that? Oh, here he is, right here. The skeletal tomb guardian. What I loved about this was just it got these 4 attacks. I was like, it's just Dungeon Master. It's fun throwing dice. So I want to do something similar to this in 5th edition. You know, shit, Justin again. Blame the IT upgrade, of course. So what I wanted to do was come up with a legendary skeleton. You know, to capture the fact that this skeleton has 4 arms. It's slashing everywhere. It's just dangerous to be next to it. And I thought of it. It was called the Tomb Guardian in 4th. And I wanted to tie this to Orcus. I was trying to think, what's Orcus? What's he up to? I don't think he'd make a Tomb Guardian, because he's more active than that. He doesn't just have his undead just hanging out waiting for someone to try to rob a tomb. So instead, what I thought was, well, what if we had a skeleton that was like a gift from Orcus that was there to protect the cult leaders? So that's where this idea of the Guardian skeleton came from. It's that 4-armed skeleton with 4 scimitars. And so I was aiming for a challenge of 3 with a legendary creature, which is not easy to hit. Oh, did this wrap around? Oh, that's weird. Okay, maybe just... Oh, there it is. There we are. Sorry, scroll up by it. So I was aiming for challenge 3, and I was able to get with the spreadsheet hit it. But again, remember, spreadsheet's just our first step. That just tells me this might be plausible. Now I need to play test. So what I did with this creature in designing it was I wanted to bring in a legendary creature at low challenge. We don't really have many of those. So what I started with, and I started with this idea that it's a creature that's there to defend a cult leader. That's its story. It's like basically a blessing from Orcus. So the first thing we had to do, we have Degenericon, the first thing I really had to work on, just starting with the spreadsheet, was just put in some placeholder numbers for armor class and hit dice, just things that felt plausible, and then really go to work saying, what can my balance of damage versus my challenge look like? And so what you see here is I wanted to get lots of attacks, so I had to go for lots of small attacks. And this is even a case where, as I was working on it, I ended up with the dexterity based off of 6 damage hits seeming to work pretty well. Though actually I'm curious, I can see I made a mistake with my... Oh wait, no, I picked it up. I think I picked it up. Anyways, well, we'll see. So 2 attacks at 6 damage each. I'm just going to plug in 12 damage. That's its on-turn actions. Don't want anything happening off-turn, though you'll see in a second. We'll get to the legendary actions down below. And so, yeah, I don't want anything else, any reactions that are doing damage getting thrown on. Then with my legendary actions, doing 6 damage, use the same scimitar attack. And then here we just say, hey, how many times over 3 rounds you can use this? Typically assuming you're damaging attacks, if you can use them all the time, you'll just use all of them. So what the big shift here was, rather than having 3 legendary actions, it gets 2. And that damage came in... So I entered all that information. That seemed like a kind of the minimum level. I don't think I could be doing less than 6 damage, because then I'm either... I guess I could go for 14 dexterity. So 5 or 6 kind of felt like minimum viable. And then from there started looking at, does this yield reasonable armor class and hit point numbers? So punching in all of that, getting my 36 points of damage, my legendary actions over the course of 3 rounds, 12 damage possible, on average for each of the other 3 rounds. Average damage output of 24, and then I just went back here and tinkered with what the attack bonus would look like, hit points, AC, and so on. And what we ended up with was this creature with AC 13, 65 hit points, and those 2 attacks on its turn, and up to 2 attacks as legendary actions. Now, that's just our basic combat functionality. Before I added anything else, I then just went on to D&D Beyond and said, okay, this guy's coming in at Challenge 3. I just want to reset all my filters and just say, look, show me Challenge 3 creatures. I want to make sure that these hit points and AC don't feel way off, way off. And again, what I want to look for is a good comparison. So when I think of this creature, something like the Bugbear Chieftain might not actually be the best comparison. I want something that's kind of like just a straight up warrior type. So here, let me just go to the next page, see if I find something a little more fitting. Something that says priest feels like it's probably gonna be a spellcaster. This is an area where things like the giant scorpion could potentially be useful. And I'm actually gonna take a peek at that because this typically beasts are just pure attacks and armor class and hit points. So taking a look at the giant scorpion in comparison, I see AC 15 and 15. Here, I'll kind of zoom in a bit. There we go. I see AC 15 and 52 hit points. I compare that to our Skittle Garden. Oh yeah, they're in the same neighborhood. Then I look at its damage. I know the Scorpion actually does pretty good damage because it's got that poison sting. But it's doing 6 damage with its claw. It can make 2 claw attacks. Then it's got 7 damage and potentially 22 poison damage with its sting. All that being added up, well, this 7 and 22 is 22 gated by you have to hit and then you get a saving throw. That feels about equivalent. I feel like right now, comparing the Skeleton Guardian to the Scorpion, I still have some room to add some features, but maybe not damaging features. And so that's then when I went to work saying, okay, I want this creature to have this feel of being a bodyguard. What are some things I can do? Well, straight off, it's a legendary creature, so I'm going to give it legendary resistance. Makes this creature much harder to shut down with a spell. It also means it's much harder to turn, because turning is a saving throw. Then I threw in this basically the Wall of Blades ability. Essentially, if you try to attack any of its allies while they're within 5 feet of it, those attacks are at disadvantage. That felt like a pretty simple way to give a good bodyguard feeling ability. I didn't want to make this require the reaction, just because I don't want the Dungeon Master to have to be thinking about that. As well, it used its Wall of Blades, its reaction's gone, so now someone else can step in and attack. I don't really feel like it's protecting anymore. But I did think about that a bit, as wouldn't it be interesting, though, to find a use for its reaction that's not a damaging effect. And so what I came up with was this Shield of Blasphemy, which says, the Guardian Skeleton expends a use of legendary resistance and applies the effect to an ally within 30 feet. So taking that legendary resistance that we give to many of our legendary creatures, and letting this creature use it to help its allies. Again, tying into that feel of this is a bodyguard, it's been sent to protect an important person or creature. It lets this creature give up its abilities to shield an ally from a spell. What's also kind of interesting is that the party throws a big shutdown spell. This creature could in theory use legendary resistance on itself and then use its reaction to use it on one of its allies. So it could use both in one go, just to essentially cancel out a very powerful or encounter tilting spell, at least for 2 people. The let's see, question from Archmage Eric. Mike, while the Guardian can take action, implies legendary actions are within that realm. I believe it would include reactions. So yeah, this is just basically to capture the idea if it's been knocked unconscious or otherwise unable to act, then it can no longer actively defend. It's basically saying we don't want this to cost an action, but we don't want you to be able to use it if you can't take actions. So it's just getting across this idea that it is actively doing something, but it's not so much that it takes up the creature's reaction. And Korgashan mentions the Mearls already uses a reaction to add AC through the use of many blades. That's also, that is something where, even though they're very different in challenge, that would be something to look at, especially in wording these abilities, to see if there are good comparisons here. Sometimes these comparisons are easy to find, like fire resistance or fire immunity. Other times you have to get a little more creative and think, what's the flavor I'm going for? What creature has a similar flavor? So yeah, and then for the legendary actions, I just gave it can make an extra scimitar attack. And then thinking about, again, going back to that idea of it's a guardian, letting it move up to 20 feet without provoking. So that either lets it keep up with whoever it's guarding, or get across the room to protect them, or and so on. So, or make a sudden movement if the rogue pops out of the shadows and assassin tries to attack someone. At the end of the rogue's turn, this skeleton can turn and zip over there to threaten the rogue or protect whoever might be trying to attack. So yeah, so that's where we were with this creature. So this, again, I wanted to walk you through this, and again, what I hope is getting across is this idea that we have this spreadsheet, but it is only one tool, and it is subservient to the idea of what's this creature's identity, what is the story, what's the experience of fighting it, that you're really using this in some ways, it forces you to zero in on what you see as the important mechanic, or the expression of that mechanic. Now, this is another creature where, thinking back to the Blazing Skeleton, I want to kind of test how close am I to challenge 3. If I was just simply to increase the damage by 1, am I tilting over? No, I'm not. Okay, well, that's good. That, and I'm just gonna, I like to kind of do these little stress, it's a stress test or whatever, quote unquote, but we can see, okay, there's a little bit of give here. I'm not like right up against what the system says. It's not like the Blazing Skeleton where I'm like, okay, I have to keep a real close eye on that aura ability, because if this is proving, if any one of these things proves better than I expected, it could be too good for its challenge. This creature here looks like it might be a little bit off, but I don't need to be as precise. I mean, obviously I'm still going to playtest it, but going in, I'm not necessarily looking for, like, one ability could throw it off. So, let's see if we have any questions here. In creating monsters, pardon me if I'm not super well read on this, is there a suggested cap for highest ability scores? The system caps ability scores at 30. And that's just thinking that in terms of a 30, that's a plus 10 ability modifier. And within how the game works, it's probably as high as you need to go. Though 30, it's kind of a soft cap. Like, I think if you went above it, if you had a reason to do it, it's not the end of the world. It's not like the game crashes if you give something a 35 or a 40. A lot of it is just in terms of conceptualizing a creature. What does a 40 or 50 strength really mean, or intelligence? So that's the end of the questions bouncing around here. Connor Pender 1, did I miss Dice Gamer action? No, it should be later on today. I am not preempting them. Okay. So, did we get a sense? Thor Lolking. I hope I'm getting that right. Will there ever be a Monsters Above CR 30? I don't know. The system definitely starts breaking down once you get there. Especially as you get to higher levels, you start getting so much variance that fights could be trash the party, or the creature might get trashed. So we might, but those are, again, they're very tricky because there's so much variance at that level. It's hard to get very predictable with what. It might be kind of meaningless versus challenge 25. Hadner Fallen Mike, could a necromancer summon it and abuse its shield of blasphemy? Yeah, I think actually this is one thing you have to watch out for, is to consider, like, what if you had a necromancer with like 5 of these and was just using it to basically like just shut down all saving throws. That is something to consider, especially at the low challenge. And that might be something where Shield of Blasphemy itself might need a rider. And that's something where, like, sort of theory crafting can be handy, where someone's like, hey, this could happen. And maybe we'd say, okay, Shield of Blasphemy might even say a creature can only gain the benefit of this ability once per day, or something like that. The question, why hasn't legendary resistance been used for lower CR previously? Typically that's because at low levels, the players may not have as many spells available. Or they won't. And so arbitrarily, essentially, to just call it what it is, shutting down a spell is much more punishing if you're like, I have 3 spells, versus if I'm 7th or 8th level and I have like 10 or 11. So we typically, that's why I cut it down to 2 per day. I could see going down to 1 per day if it didn't have Shield of Blasphemy. But I could also see that this creature, maybe that doesn't quite fit. Even though this creature is legendary, it's a bit more subservient. Maybe legendary resistance just goes away and Shield of Blasphemy just becomes a once per day ability. So that's something that I would keep an eye on. The Hawkspar 10, if a necromancer summoned it, would it get legendary action still? Yeah, it would function as printed. If there was an issue there, we would probably say in the stat block itself or somewhere in the description if we felt like it was going to have an interaction there we didn't want to have happen. We'd probably have to just shut that down in the creature itself. Let's see. Is Archery Jarek follow up for the ability scores? Scaling. As far as ability scores, scaling with challenge, not really. It's just more the mathematical effect. So if you gave a creature you intend to be challenge 5 a 20 strength, you would just see its damage and accuracy would go up, and that's really the limiting factor there. So cool. All right. Let's see. M. Draco, is the cone and the fear spell maintained as long as concentration lasts? Hit me up on Twitter if you have the question. I want to try to focus on the monster stuff, but it would depend really on the spell's description. So it probably, I would say no. It's probably what's happening is it's just the effect on the creatures rather than the cone inflicting new creatures of the effect. But yeah. Let's see. MD Saraji, is it possible to control the guardian skeleton with control undead? That's one I'll do a quick look up on, because that's another one to think of. Here, we'll just go to I'll just embiggen here. Because that is something to consider too, especially once we get see, that's the Necromancer class feature, right? Not seeing it here. There we go. And begin. Got Command Undead starting at 14th level. You can use magic to bring undead under your control. Unless it says something here specifically about legendary creatures not being subject to this.